Alright boys, I'm back, and this time I thought we would do something different. I thought we should take a step away from the bright lights of the House of H and look over to the red-headed stepchild of the wrestling industry, AEW. Recently I have gone back and started watching some of their old shows, and I thought it would be a great time for me, an AEW noob, to talk to you about things I like and don't like about this company. So let's get right into it. I am gonna start off with the negatives and then finish this video off in a positive note, talking to you about all the things I do like about this company. So let's dive right in. One of the issues that I have with AEW is that they have no identity, and that is a very tough thing to tackle because it takes a lot of time for your show to gain an identity or to gain something that makes it unique. You know, when WWE first started, everybody probably thought the same thing, but since they worked at it and they've been there for so long, now they have an identity and they have something that makes them unique. When you watch a WWE product, you know it is a WWE product. But if I were to take somebody that doesn't really watch wrestling, doesn't really follow wrestling, and I just put AEW on their TV and didn't tell them that it was AEW, and you know, they didn't have AEW branding all over the ring, and I just asked them what company this is, they probably would struggle. AEW doesn't have anything that makes them unique. They don't have a gimmick that makes them stand out, that makes them memorable in the viewer's eyes. It's just another wrestling company with a lot of wrestlers that do a lot of flips and a lot of kicks, and that is not unique anymore because WWE also has that. WWE now has that more than ever. Everybody has small wrestlers that can jump real fast and kick real hard. That doesn't make you unique anymore. AEW needs to find an identity or something that makes them unique so people can remember them, and gives them an identity that makes them stand out so people can say, yeah, that's an AEW show right there. I can tell that they don't have that, unfortunately, yet. Another issue that I have with AEW is that there's too many belts in the company right now. I went onto the AEW website and I went to the roster page. Now, on top of the page, they have a champion section. It's only AEW belts and like the international belts. But if you scroll down, you'll also notice that they have the Ring of Honor belts. So how many belts do you think AEW currently has? Well, from my investigation, my shitty investigation, I counted about 14 different belts in this company. 14 belts is insane. That is way too many belts. There is no reason at all to have 14 different belts in your company. AEW is like 6 years old. WWE, who has been here since the 80s, does not even have 14 active belts. For you to have 14 active belts, it means that every single belt must have a storyline and a feud that makes the belt feel important. And that is not happening. No belt in AEW really feels that important because there's so many of them that nobody can stand out. AEW can very easily fix this problem. All they need to do is take all their belts and throw them away. They just need to keep 5 belts. They need to have 3 belts for the men and 2 belts for the women. They should have the World Heavyweight Championship, a secondary title, and the tag team title belts for the men. And for the women, just a world title and a secondary title. The world title is important, pretty self-explanatory. You need to have a world champion, and the secondary title is a good way to make a rising star feel more important as you're about to put them in the world title scene. And since the men's roster is always bigger than the women's roster, give them a tag team division so you have something for teams and multiple people to go after. This way, your storylines can be focused around only these 5 belts, and then it can make them feel important. If you have people going after a belt, feuding for a belt, and wanting that belt, it makes that belt feel important. If nobody wants to go after a belt, then why should we care when the belt is on the line? If everybody on the roster wants to be the World Heavyweight Champion, then it makes the belt feel important, and it makes the fans focus and pay attention when there is a world title match. Sticking with the idea of excess and too many things, not only does AEW have way too many belts, it also has way too many wrestlers for its own good. When I was on the AEW website, I also counted the active roster, and from my calculations, my messed up, most definitely wrong calculations, I counted about 172 active wrestlers in the company right now. There is no reason for AEW to have 172 wrestlers in its roster right now. They have too many people. There's too many people that are doing nothing. Unfortunately, the only way to fix this issue is to cut down the roster. I never want people to get fired. I don't want people to lose their jobs. jobs. But if we're talking about AEW and how it can better itself and make the product more viable, it needs to start cutting people. There's way too many people that are not TV ready. You cannot write storylines for 172 wrestlers. You have 2 hours a week. How many people can you possibly use in 2 hours a week? 172 people is insane. If we're being honest, AEW can cut down its active roster to 40 people, and that's still probably a lot, but it is a lot better than 172 people. And having a lot of wrestlers does not only hurt the company because they have to pay all these people, but it also hurts the wrestlers themselves. Imagine if you were hired as an AEW wrestler for like a 2-year contract, and then Tony Khan never did anything with you. You just sat in catering, just waiting to be used, but you were never used. Your 2 years came up and you were let go. What did you do for those last 2 years? Nothing. So your name has lost its value, people have forgotten about you, and nobody cares about you. So good luck trying to get a job in the indies after 2 years of doing nothing. Having so many wrestlers not only hurts the company financially, but it also hurts those wrestlers that do absolutely nothing. Wrestling is a cutthroat business, and you need to be on TV as much as possible so people can remember you. If you are just sitting in the back at an AEW show doing nothing, you are wasting whatever value your name might have. Why does AEW have 2 weekly TV shows? Why does Collision exist? It is completely unnecessary for AEW to have 2 weekly TV shows so early in its creation. Vince McMahon and the WWE didn't start off with Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. Vince McMahon had Monday Night Raw, and he worked on that show for years, making sure that it was viable for him to make a second show. He put everything he could to make Raw important, and when Raw was important, SmackDown came along. But AEW jumped the ship way too early. Dynamite is not viable yet. There's still so much work that AEW needs to do with Dynamite. And now that they have Collision, it just takes away from Dynamite. So both shows suffer at the end. You need to focus on one show, put all your energy and effort on that show, make sure it's the best show you can possibly make, and when that show finally becomes viable, then if you want, you can go and make a second show on a different day of the week. But there is no reason for AEW to have 2 weekly shows. The best thing that AEW can do for itself is cut Collision. They should just go back to having Dynamite and their monthly pay-per-views, or even cut down on pay-per-views. You don't need to have a pay-per-view every month. Some storylines can take longer than just 1 month to build up to a pay-per-view match, but they need to cut out Collision because there's no point of ever watching Collision. Nothing happens in Collision, and when nothing happens in Collision, nothing happens in Dynamite, because it takes resources and effort away from Dynamite to do nothing with on Collision. So both shows suffer at the end. The best thing AEW can do right now is just focus on Dynamite, make sure it's the best possible show week after week, cut down on the roster, just keep those big names and put them on Dynamite every week to make Dynamite feel must-see TV. To have such a big roster with so many filler wrestlers that nobody cares about and so many jobbers that nobody would ever pay attention to, and now have them split between 2 different shows, it just hurts the company and the brand value. Get rid of all the jobbers, get rid of all the filler, keep all your big stars, cut Collision out, and put everything on Dynamite, and make Dynamite the best show you can possibly do every single week. And to make Dynamite feel important and must-see, unfortunately, you will have to have some very good feuds and storylines going for it. And unfortunately, storylines in AEW are not any better to the WWE. The WWE right now is at its worst possible position. Vince McMahon is gone, a new company has taken over, and Triple H is currently burning the fucker down just for fun. So this is the best time for AEW to focus and create some must-see storylines, but they are not doing that. Why is AEW not firing from all cylinders, making sure their storylines are the best they can possibly be? Because they have too much shit to deal with. Not only do they have 172 wrestlers that they need to deal with, but they have 2 different weekly shows that they need to write for every week. Cut down the shows, cut down the wrestling roster, just focused for like 5 years just on Dynamite, create some amazing storylines, some amazing feuds, you can have Dynamite becoming viable in a few handful of years. But since they are so overbooked, so stretched out with all this filler and all this nonsense, storylines in AEW are hurting. Wrestling is made by its storylines and its characters, and the WWE right now has zero of that. This is your prime opportunity to take advantage of that and create some must-see characters with some must-see storylines. The roster, the storylines, the belts, that's not the only thing where AEW is messing up on. AEW also has a big problem with ex-WWE guys, but that is not really a problem because everybody in today's wrestling world wrestles for every other company. Like, there's no such thing as an ex-WWE guy or a TNA guy or if I get a WCW guy, it doesn't exist. But there is something with the fans and ex-WWE guys. You might not want to say it, but when an ex-WWE guy leaves the company and goes to AEW, that person automatically feels more important and a bigger star than any original AEW wrestler. And that is because WWE is still the pinnacle of wrestling. If you made it to the WWE, it means that you are better than everybody else who has never been to it. And unfortunately, that will never go away because AEW is still the number 2 company, and you don't want to be the number 2 company. So of course, AEW original stars are gonna look like number 2s next to ex-WWE stars. Doesn't matter who it is, it could be a jobber from the WWE, they will still feel more important than any OG AEW star. And that has nothing to do with the wrestlers themselves or how good they are, that just has to do with the business and the power that the WWE has over wrestling and just the mainstream zeitgeist. WWE is mainstream, they are known by millions of people. Millions of people do not watch their product, but at least they know what WWE is and they have a rough idea of who they are. Nobody in the public zeitgeist or mainstream media knows what AEW is. AEW is still a very niche, hardcore product for wrestling fans. A normal person that doesn't watch wrestling knows what AEW is, and that's the biggest issue of why ex-WWE stars feel more important. Just because they have that WWE stamp of approval makes them 10 times more valuable and viable than people that haven't had that stamp, because WWE is still mainstream, it is still the most popular wrestling company in the world, and if you are in the WWE, it means that you are better than everybody else in the eyes of the public. And there's nothing really they can do about that. Unfortunately, like, AEW will still need to hire ex-WWE stars, but they'll just have to work 10 times harder to make sure that their guys, their original stars that never made it to the WWE, can feel more viable. That is not something wrestlers themselves have to do. It is something that the company itself has to do. The company itself has to expand and make its brand known to a lot more people in order to make AEW stars start to feel like they are on the same level as WWE wrestlers. Now, all those things that I talked to you had to do with the business aspect of AEW. It is something that the company itself controls, not something that the wrestlers themselves can change. But I do have a few problems that the wrestlers can most definitely change. So let's get right into it. First of all, when you watch AEW, you get the vibe that a lot of people just do not want to be there. If WWE knocked on the door of some of these wrestlers, they would jump ship immediately, and that only hurts the product. If I'm watching AEW and I can tell that the people on AEW TV do not want to be there and they just want to be on WWE, it makes AEW look like a joke. If your own wrestlers do not want to be there, then why would I watch it? That is something that the WWE definitely knows. That's why you see so many different AEW stars going to the WWE. It's not because the WWE needs them. No, WWE realizes that if they do scoop up all AEW stars, it only hurts AEW, because in the eyes of the fans, it makes it look like everybody is leaving AEW and going to the WWE. Everybody starts at AEW, but at the end, they all make it to the WWE because that's where everybody wants to be. Now, let me get into the two biggest issues that I have have with this company. First of all, there are a lot of wrestlers in AEW that are not TV ready. A lot of them just look terrible. Attires are bad. Nobody has hit the gym. Nobody has gone to their barber. Nobody put on their poker face tonight. Everybody looks like a bum. And I do have a few examples. First of all, Adam Cole. This guy, I don't know how this guy made it on TV. I don't know who thought of letting this guy on TV, but it was the worst possible decision ever made. Adam Cole has no definition, no muscle tone, nothing. Adam Cole hasn't seen the inside of a gym since 1948. Adam Cole is the kind of dude that struggles to lift the bar. He has chicken legs and his arms are the size of sticks. He is so tiny, he is so scrawny that a strong gust of wind can probably knock him over. Other examples of wrestlers in AEW that are just not TV ready. Eddie Kingston. He's fat! What they were thinking when they allowed this guy to go out on TV like that, but it is terrible. It makes the company look so bad. Can you imagine if you were just a normal person that didn't really watch wrestling and you were just scrolling your TV and you go onto TBS or TNT or whatever and you see AEW for the first time and the first wrestler that you see come out is Eddie Kingston, that fat fuck? You would laugh and never look back. You cannot take Eddie Kingston serious. This guy is so out of shape. This guy is so bad with his physique. He needs a treadmill and he needs it quick. Another person that is not TV ready is Hook. This guy is 5'6" and 120 pounds at best. Who thought about letting this guy on TV and making him have a intimidating character? How are you supposed to be intimidated by Hook? You cannot be intimidated by somebody that is the same height as your 5th grade cousin. He is so small. And I know he is the son of Taz, so that's probably how he got into this company. The wrestling industry loves nepotism, but Hook is another example of a wrestler that should have never made it on TV. Let me move on to my biggest issue that I have with this company, and that is the wrestling itself. AEW has a unique style of wrestling, and that is overbooked, sloppy, indie-rific, spot monkey garbage. Let me get into the first aspect that I do not like about the wrestling in AEW, and that is the lack of selling in this company. This company loves to have wrestlers no-sell big-ass moves for some cheap pops, and the worst person that does that is Will Ospreay. Have you ever seen a Will Ospreay match? It is fast. It is breakneck speed, and that is the problem with his matches. He doesn't take the time to slow down to allow his matches to breathe and to settle. Will Ospreay will do 3 big moves back to back just to have his opponent stand up 2 seconds later so he can hit another move. It makes the product feel bush league. Not only does it hurt the match itself because nobody can get invested, but it also hurts both of the wrestlers. Why will Will Ospreay hit one of his big moves just for his opponent to stand up 2 seconds later? That just made Will Ospreay look like a bitch. It made his offense look weak and ineffective. And then 3 minutes later, Will Ospreay will hit the same move and then his opponent will stay down. First of all, you killed the move by not selling it the first time, but then he hit the same move and this time it is hurting. How does that work? So not only does it ruin the whole believability of wrestling, but it also ruins Will Ospreay's offensive because it makes him look like a bitch that cannot put his opponent down. And then it also ruins his opponent because he got hit with the move the first time and he was fine. He got hit with the move a second time and now he's down. This guy's a bitch. How can he not handle it now? It was clearly ineffective the first time. Why is it effective now? It just ruins the whole aspect of wrestling and what they're trying to tell. You cannot have a story being told to you if nobody is selling. You're supposed to sell in wrestling to make it look like it's a real fight. But in a Will Ospreay match, not only do you get up 2 seconds later, you do about 5 different flips before you even do that. And I'm not trying to pick on Will Ospreay. There's other people that do that too. Black Taurus, I was watching a match with him in Dynamite a few weeks back. I think he changed his name to something else, but he was Black Taurus in TNA. His opponent hit his finisher and he didn't sell it. He just got up immediately. Why would you do that? Why would you ever do that? That makes the whole match look idiotic. And this is a very simple issue to fix. Just tell your wrestlers to sell and to stay down. There's no reason for every big move to be followed up by another big move 2 seconds later. Just sit down. Just take a breath. Make it settle in the fans' mind. What they just saw was a big move and it really hurt. That's why you're down on the floor. Just stay down. It is such an easy problem to fix, but for some reason, they just choose not to. They've been doing this garbage for years, bro. Any Young Bucks match, it's 20 different moves back to back. Everybody just gets up. Everybody does 20,000 flips. Everybody does 50,000 different kicks, and they get up immediately. What is the point of that? It is not realistic. It is not believable. You are not telling a story. You are just doing acrobatics. That's the problem with AEW wrestling. It is not a story. It is not a match. It is acrobatics. It is a circus. It is a bunch of monkeys throwing shit at each other. And the no selling aspect is not even the worst part. The worst part is that it is sloppy. It is some of the sloppiest wrestling you would ever see because they have so many wrestlers in that roster that are not viable that of course the wrestling will suffer. How can you make sure every wrestler you hire is good in the ring when you have 172 of them? And you know, sloppy wrestling, it is whatever. I can take it or leave it. WWE, the pinnacle of professional wrestling, has some of the sloppiest wrestling you've ever seen in your life. AEW shouldn't be any different, but it should, because for some reason we have just started accepting sloppy wrestling and thinking that it's normal, but it's not. But whatever, at least sell. In the WWE, they somewhat sell, they somewhat do it, but in AEW, nobody sells. Everybody's on their feet 2 seconds after getting a pile driver on the steel steps. Just sit down, just lay on the floor for like 5 more seconds to make it feel more impactful. Don't get up immediately. There's no reason. It doesn't slow down. They don't let their matches breathe. They don't have any psychology, any planning, any storytelling in their matches. It's just flips, kicks, chops, and jumps and dives for no reason. And you can only go so far with that type of wrestling. Alright, that's enough of me complaining about things I do not like about AEW. Let me tell you about things I do like about AEW. The first thing I like is their roster, and the fact that they have some big names in their roster. Now, all of the big names that they have are not mainstream names yet. They're not John Cena, Randy Orton. They're not on that level, but they are strong wrestling names, so they have a lot of following, and they can bring in a lot of people that are into wrestling. And that's a good thing, because you can build a very solid show around those people. Just naming a few: Tony Storm, Sasha Banks, Jon Moxley, Chris Jericho, MJF. All those people are known by millions of wrestling fans all over the world, so you can easily get people to tune into your show if you have something interesting happening with them. Another thing that I want to bring up when it comes to the roster in AEW, unlike the WWE, which is an old man's home, the roster in AEW is much more younger, and that's great. You want young wrestlers, and especially you want young wrestlers in the main event, so you can have them around as long as possible. The longer a wrestler spends in the main event, the more you can build around them, the more storylines you can give them, bigger of a star they will become. Another thing that I like about this company is that they give you your money's worth when it comes to their pay-per-views. WWE right now gives you these 5-match, 2.5 hour long pay-per-views that nothing happens in them, and they charge you about $500,000 for nosebleed tickets. But in AEW, you'll get a pay-per-view that's about 4 hours long with about 9 different matches, and that is good. That is definitely a very good positive. Not every pay-per-view needs to be 4 hours long, but at least they give you more than 5 matches, which is amazing. Now, granted, of course, not all those matches are must-see matches. They don't all need to be on the pay-per-view. They can definitely cut out a few, but I respect them that they decide to give you more matches than 5. Giving you 5 matches and then charging you $500,000 for a ticket is insulting. At least AEW doesn't spit in the face of its fans as much as the WWE when it comes to their pay-per-views. So that's a really good thing. Another thing that I really like about AEW is that it is adult-oriented. Unlike the WWE that has been PG for decades now, AEW targets a much more mature and adult audience, and it's finally refreshing to finally have a wrestling company that tailors its product for adults and not little kids like the WWE. Another thing that I really like about AEW is that they have some of the best commentary out there right now. I'm not gonna touch too much on this topic right now because I'm gonna make a video on it all by itself, but as of now, AEW has the best commentary around because they have Tony Schiavone and JR in the company, and Michael Cole is nowhere to be found, so that's a big positive. Another thing that is great about AEW is that they do not go overboard with the ads like WWE. When you watch a WWE show right now, there are ads non-stop, and everywhere you look at, there are about 50 different ads. Every time Michael Cole talks, he's either shilling or trying to sell you some shitty product that you don't need. But in AEW, the commentary team does not do that. While there are ads on the barricades around the ring mat itself is clean from ads, and yeah, they do have commercial breaks. It is a weekly TV show, but it is a lot more limited compared to the garbage that WWE has been giving us now with all the ads. And the most important thing that I like about AEW is if you are looking for just professional wrestling and you do not care about the gimmicks, the characters, and the storylines, and you just want to watch professional wrestling once a week, then AEW is the place for you. When you watch Raw and SmackDown, you might be lucky if you get 3 to 4 matches, but if you watch Dynamite, you'll get around 5 to 6 matches. So if you're just looking for pure wrestling, AEW is the place for you. Now, it is sloppy wrestling and they do have a lot of botches, but if you can ignore that, then AEW is where you should go if you just want to watch professional wrestling and nothing else. Now, will AEW ever get to the level of the WWE or even become a threat to the Big E? Realistically, no, but if we're being hopeful, then yeah, sure, they might be able to do it, but if they want to do it, they're gonna have to change a lot of things about their product. First of all, they're gonna have to focus on storylines and feuds a lot more. They're gonna have to fix the in-ring wrestling, and they have to build up their credibility with non-hardcore wrestling fans. AEW has a long way ahead of it, and it needs to change a lot of things about its product if it ever wants to be a competitor to the WWE. If they ever want to overthrow the WWE and become the leader of the industry, that's a whole other dance that we gotta talk about. There's a lot more things they need to do if they ever want to do that. Now, is it possible? Sure, anything's possible in this world. They might do it. They might pull the biggest upset victory of all time. You never know. And the only people that will benefit from that is the fans. If AEW is doing good, WWE has to do better. And if WWE is doing good, AEW has to do better. So at the end of the day, the only people that benefit no matter what are the fans. So yeah, I hope both of these companies do the best they can possibly do. Thank you all for watching.